Hello, folks, and welcome back into part two of this week's show. And in these two segments, I am joined by Jeremy Jean Marie and Damon Hack. Jeremy is just a wonderful player and a wonderful individual. He is a self-taught +3 handicap, and one of the many things that's great about him is if you go out to his Instagram page at Golfing with Jeremy, he's trying to help us all get there with him, help us all become a great player just like he is. So he shares a lot of things that he has learned along the way in his golf journey, a lot of swing tips, a lot of techniques. So he is absolutely wonderful, and I had a great time talking to him. You'll understand why when you listen in to this first segment. Following him is going to be, like I say, Damon Hack. Damon is one of the great interviewers, TV hosts, and writers of our time. You know Damon from the Golf Channel. If you remember back in his career, he's also been a wonderful writer for places like Newsday, the New York Times, and Sports Illustrated as well. One of my absolute favorite guests here on Next on the Tee. So sit back, relax, let us take your mind off everything else going on in your life for the next hour or so. Before we get started, I want to remind you about our friends over at 2 Under. 2 Under men's performance briefs are the unofficial underwear of the PGA, Ryder Cup, and President's Cup teams, and are sold in over 3,000 golf pro shops and golf specialty retailers nationwide. Ricky Fowler is their global ambassador, and over 50 other PGA, Korn Ferry, and Champions Tour players wear them. Just to mention a few, they are David Toms, Jerry Kelly, Justin Thomas, William McGirt, Scott McCarron, and Chris DeMarco. The Joey Pouch technology provides the ultimate male asset management, delivering maximum comfort from the tee box to the boardroom to the bedroom. Go to 2under.com to check out the bundle specials that offer substantial discounts for being a Next on the Tee listener. That's the number 2, UNDR.com. 2 Under, performance in your pants.
Every January, PGA Tour Superstore pros meet every manufacturer, learn about the latest equipment, log thousands of hours of training, and together hit over 100,000 balls. All so they can get you the perfect fit.
All right, now also making his Next on the Tee debut with me this week is Jeremy Jean Marie. Jeremy is a self-taught +3 handicap from Davie, Florida. He's played on the minor league golf tour and in several of the major amateur tournaments like the US Mid-Am. He graduated from Florida Atlantic University with his bachelor's degree in finance. He's now out in Las Vegas, and another great follow. You can find him on Instagram at Golfing with Jeremy. Shares a lot of great tips for those of us who would love to be a +3 handicap one day, and I'm delighted I get to have him with me this week here on Next on the Tee. Hey, Jeremy, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me.
Jeremy, let's start by going back to when you were a kid in Miami. Did you play other sports, and if so, which ones did you play?
Yeah, no, I actually came to the game of golf relatively late, but I did grow up playing different sports. I'm the youngest of 3 brothers. So, we played a ton of different sports, mostly like basketball, football in the yard. And then in high school, like actual organized competitive sports, I played football and I also played tennis back in those days. But it wasn't until college, actually the day after my 20th birthday, was the first time I picked up a golf club and fell in love with this sport. Yep.
So what got you to do it? What said to you, you know what, hey, I might try this game?
Yeah, I was actually so I was up in school in Tallahassee. My family was down in South Florida, and I came home for Thanksgiving break one year. And my older brother, he started working in financial services, and so he started golfing with some coworkers. And so when I came down for the break, he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna go to the driving range. You want to go?" I was like, "All right." I played tennis at that time, so tennis and golf are kind of go hand in hand somewhat. So I was like, all right, I've always wanted to give golf a try. So we went to the driving range. I was terrible, as most people typically are when they start. But yeah, I definitely caught the bug. When I went back to school, started kind of practicing every day. And yeah, just kind of got the bug. I'm sure you're familiar.
Indeed. But the game had to come pretty naturally for you because you're still a pretty young guy. And if you just started when you were 20, couldn't have been all that long ago. And it usually takes most of us 10 years just to go from awful to bad. and here you are at a +3. How'd you become so good so quickly?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I will say it probably did come somewhat naturally. At least, familiar with sports. I guess I had some level of coordination. Playing a lot of tennis, I'm sure, kind of helps with the rotational movement and all that. I mean, I think it didn't take me. I think I didn't. I don't think it was that fast, but I guess in kind of the grand scheme of things, it probably was relatively quickly. But also, like I said, like I got the bug, so I was playing or practicing pretty much every day. Very very humble beginnings. I was a broke college student when I started, so actually I went to Walmart and bought like a box of $5 golf balls, and I'd carry them around in like this grocery bag. And there was a little 9-hole course that had like a little practice area to the side, and I would just go out there and hit golf balls all day. Just working on the swing and stuff like that. But I guess it did somewhat come naturally, but it was also a lot of just me playing a lot of golf as well.
Jeremy, we talk on this show all the time about how playing golf, playing tournament golf, and then playing tour level golf are three completely different things. You may not have played
Yes.
at the PGA Tour level yet, but you've played in some of the highest amateur level events that we have. Have you seen and felt the differences as you've progressed through those levels?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, buddy of mine likes to call it hit and giggle golf, right? When you're playing with your buddies. Yeah, I mean it's a lot different than when you play tournaments for sure. I think the mental game is where that comes out the most. Um, your mind starts doing different things when you're under the gun. It's easy to get frustrated and those kinds of things. So I would say the mental game is definitely where the difference is, and probably over the past year or two, I think that's what's helped me to get to a +3 is kind of doing that mental work and not getting as frustrated on the course and those kinds of things. But yeah, you definitely notice a big difference in the tournament level play.
One of the clubs that I saw that you were affiliated with was Hidden Valley out near LA, which looks like a fantastic golf course with a lot of
Yeah.
elevation changes. Talk about playing there.
Yeah, no, it's a great course. So for me, so I lived in Southern California for about a year before I moved to Las Vegas. So um, for me, coming from growing up in Florida, it was all flat courses, a lot of water. So going out to Southern California was definitely a different experience, having to play courses with elevation changes, hitting blind tee shots, and getting used to that. Just slopey greens, Poana greens. But yeah, that's a great course out there. Definitely highly recommend it. Anybody if you're in the Inland Empire area, I definitely recommend Hidden Valley. A lot of those elevation changes, really a lot of really interesting holes. Just a really fun track to play.
You played several events on the minor league golf tour when you were in Florida. You teamed with Benjamin Springer to win an event in the training division at Eagle Trace Golf Club in Coral Springs. You had two other top 10 finishes back in
Yeah,
late 2022. Talk about that tour and playing in the training division there.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm a big fan of the minor league golf tour. It gives people a chance to experience, somewhat of the professional golf without a huge price tag. And one of the cool things they have is actually the training division. So it's a little bit cheaper. You're not, it's mostly amateur, so you're not really playing for the purse. But you're playing in some of the same. You're playing the same course. You're playing the same tournament as some of the pro guys. So it's a good chance to see what they're shooting on the same day as you on the same course, and it gives you a little bit just a dose of reality of how good some of those guys are. But no, it's a great experience, especially that course, Eagle Trace. Really cool course. Uh, it was South Florida in the summer, so you had the typical hour-long rain delay in the middle of the round. But then again, it's another chance to kind of test your mental game. Like we talked about in tournament golf. Having to stop for an hour, or grab lunch, or whatever the case may be, stay focused, warm back up, and go back out there and still play. Is definitely something that if you're going to play tournament golf, you have to get used to. But yeah, I have nothing but good things to say about the minor league tour. They do a great job of running that tour. Scott Turner is the guy who runs that tour. He's actually a stick as well. He's qualified for the US Mid-Am a ton of times. But yeah, great experience playing out there.
You recently did a challenge for yourself that we got to go along with you. You wanted to see how many days it would take until you hit every green in regulation, and you did it on day 5, which is very impressive. Talk about that achievement and how important a good wedge game is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm a big data person. So my day job, I'm a financial analyst, and so that translates over to my golf game. So I'm a sucker for any golf data that's available out there. And greens in regulation has been shown to be correlated with scoring average the most out of any other stat. So definitely being able to hit a lot of greens is super important. And honestly, at this point, kind of in my journey, being at a +3, trying to get better, the wedge game is really um, where I try to spend the most of my time and will be spending most of my time in terms of trying to get better. Because if you look at the pros, they're just so good inside of 125 yards. Speaking of data, a stat that I think is crazy is I think the best players on tour from 125 yards and in at birdie on average about 25% of the time, which is kind of crazy to think about. But it's such an important part of the game, and that was a lot of fun doing that challenge. I love just challenging myself in the game. Being able to do some fun stuff. That's one of the cool things about having a social media page is being able to do some fun stuff, kind of break up the regular routine of practicing. But yeah, the challenge was a lot of fun, and hey, I recommend anybody, you know, if you get a chance, try it on your home course, see how long it would take, and it'll definitely help make you a better play, I think, in the end.
You shared several great playing tips on your Instagram account. Again, it's at Golfing with Jeremy. And you've got a great driver warm up routine, which includes some great stretches to start. Do you mind taking us through how you get yourself prepared to hit great drives?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I shared it on my page. It's just one of the videos that actually has done really well. But yeah, I'm a big fan of stretching. I go through a little bit in that video what my stretching routine is, but honestly, I try to. It doesn't happen all the time, but I try to stretch at least every day. Just because I know it's big for the golf swing. It's big for longevity. I plan on playing this game until my last day. So being flexible is a big part of that. So yeah, I try to make sure that I stretch every time before I go out. And I've also injured, pulled some muscles in the past, and that's kept me out from practicing. So um, I learned that lesson the hard way. But yeah, I always try to stretch before I get into it. And typically I will start with wedges or just making some lighter swings. But if I am, going straight into the driver, I try to make sure I, spend at least 5-10 minutes just making slower tempo swings. One that's going to help me once I start making full swings, kind of be more in sequence. But also it's just a good way to warm up the body. It's I go to the range all the time, and you see somebody walk up with their bucket of balls, and before you know it, they're hitting driver as hard as they can. uh, I know, me at 34, I'm starting to get to a point where I don't think I'm gonna be able to do that for too long. So yeah, I try to make sure I just get the body warmed up and going before I really get into it.
Talk about your 3 keys to hitting a fairway finder off the tee.
Yeah, for sure. I will say, speaking of tournament golf, that's one shot that you absolutely need to have. You're gonna, playing tough courses, you're gonna have those holes where you can't miss left or right. So being able to develop a shot that you can hit a fairway with is really important. So for me, I try to hit a little low cut, a little low fade as my fairway finder shot. Um, so for me to be able to do that, what I'll typically do is I'll tee the ball up a little bit lower. I typically hit a pretty high ball. But for this shot, I'm trying to keep it a little bit lower, a little bit more controlled. So I'll tee it up a little bit lower. I won't swing as hard. I'll say I swing at about 75% um, on that shot. So that's the goal, is swing about 75%. And then I'm just trying to hit a little low fade in there. And yeah, that's a key shot. I recommend anybody, even if you aren't playing tournaments, definitely try to develop some kind of some kind of shot that you can rely on, that you feel like you can hit into the fairway the majority of the time. Because at some point you're gonna have some pressure on the line, whether that's a $5 bet with your buddy, or you're trying to qualify for the U.S. Open or something like that. You're gonna have to be able to hit a fairway at some point, and just being able to develop that shot is super helpful.
You've got great advice as well for how to make more putts. You call it lessons learned as a scratch golfer. Do you mind sharing what you learned?
Yeah, for sure. I will say early on or earlier on in my career, I was not a big fan of equipment, stuff. I was like, it's always the Indian, never the arrow, right? Like that was always my stance. I've loosened up a little bit on that. And one of the big things for me was actually getting a putter fitting. So this was back when I was in Florida. I went in. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Sam Putting Lab, but they hook this device up to your putter. They have you hit 10 putts, and it reads all this data about your stroke. And the big thing there was that I learned was that I have a inside takeaway on my stroke. So I take it back to the inside and I release down the line. And so that matches up best with a blade style putter. So I got fit for that, which really definitely helped make a difference. And then also I spend a lot of time working on starting my putts online. So for me, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. Some people do like a chalk line. For me, I like to use this aluminum yardstick. It's like $3 at Walmart. But I'll go to putting green, find a straight putt there, uh, and then I'll just work on hitting balls on that and making sure they stay on the yardstick. So if you get it offline at all, left or right, it'll fall off the yardstick and you won't make the putt. So that's been a great help for me just to learn starting my putts online. But in general, yeah, I would say as a key, definitely get fit for a putter, figure out something that works the best for your stroke. And then a lot of your time practicing putting should be working on starting putts online. I mean, that's what's going to help you make those short putts when you need to.
How about your 1 hour routine for how you prepare to go play a round of golf? If we could get to the course an hour before our tee time, how do you go through your bag to get ready to play?
Yeah, for sure. I'll say if you don't have an hour, the one thing that I would say for sure to try to do is spend some time like lag putting and getting used to the speed of the greens. That's the quickest way to add strokes to your round is when you don't have a feel for the speed of the greens. Three putts will add strokes the quickest. So I always make sure that I have enough time to get on the greens and get a feel for the speed and hit some lag putts. Um, but yeah, from there, once I get to the range, then I'll spend some time stretching. As I mentioned, getting the body warmed up. Um, making sure I'm good there, not going to be pulling anything. And then from there, I try to start light and easy swing. So I'll go wedges. Typically, I I have a little drill that I do where I'll start with left hand only. So I'll swing some wedges with just the left hand. That really forces me to slow down and get a feel for the weight of the club. So I'll make some swings just left hand only, and then I'll make some swings just standing on my left foot. So I'll do some swings that way for a similar reason, just to get a feel for the weight of the club. Um, and just make some easy swings, just left foot only. And then I'll get into my progression, which for me, I'll typically go hit some shots with a lob wedge, and I'll go 8 iron, then 5 iron, then 3 wood, then driver. And then I try to end the session just whatever tee shot I'm trying to hit on the first tee. I'll try to hit that when I'm on the range and just try to visualize that shot before I go.
Speaking of getting the body warmed up, in your exercise routine, you use medicine balls to get more explosiveness in your swing. Talk about what you do there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, one of the things I'm trying to do is add a little bit of distance, and so I'm trying to incorporate some explosiveness exercises into my workouts. So I have a few different things that I'll do with the medicine ball, um, but my favorite one is probably is I'll kind of stand in a golf posture with a medicine ball, and then I'll take it back to the top of the swing, and then just explode down and slam the medicine ball into the ground. That, for all the golf nerds out there who look into the research, your ground reaction forces is a big part of being able to produce power. So I'll use the medicine ball, just trying to work on maximizing the amount of power that I'm putting into the ground, which then helps push more power back away from it and help get you some club head speed. Won't go too much into that, but yeah, definitely medicine ball, like working on explosiveness is something that I'm incorporating, trying to get a little bit longer off the tee. So try to do that as much as I can, and just build some explosiveness there for sure.
Jeremy, before I let you go, let our listeners know again how they can follow you on your Instagram page and across social media and online as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now it's mostly the Instagram page, but my handle is Golfing with Jeremy. I'm also on YouTube at the same Golfing with Jeremy. So if you're obsessed with golf just like I am, I try to share tips, things that I've learned on my journey. Would love if you follow me, shoot me a message. Always love interacting with people on there, and look forward to hearing from some people.
Well, Jeremy, it's been great having you as part of this week's show. I hope you'll come back again sometime, update us on how things are going with you, share more of your stories and insights, and also some of these playing lessons. Outstanding stuff, my friend.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I would love to come back at some point. So would love to.
Thank you, Jeremy. Take care. All the best in your family. I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thanks, Chris.
See you, Jeremy.
See you.
Again, that is Jeremy Jean Marie. How great is he? Again, follow him on social media at Golfing with Jeremy, a self-taught +3 handicap. He is a shining example of what hard work and perseverance are going to get you. He is so great at sharing his keys. I can't tell you enough how much I have enjoyed following him on Instagram and watching these videos. Helped my game a lot. Look, this is the guy who's self-taught. So it's not like he's a PGA professional or he's had a lot of lessons. He figured it out on his own. So that helps a lot of us have some hope that we can figure it out. And it's great having a PGA professional. You guys know how much I love Tom Patry and the guys that come on this show. But to see just kind of an average guy that has figured it out on his own through trial and error and the practice. And look, he spends a lot of time on the short game. And you know how Tom always talks about short game, short game, short game. That's the place that we can go out there and shave a whole bunch of strokes, whether it's your short game or your putting, that's going to improve our scores. And Jeremy helps you with a lot of those as well, how to hit it close with your wedges and make those putts. So fantastic guy. I look forward to having him back on the show again. I hope very, very soon. Coming up next is a guy, like I said earlier in the show, I feel like is one of the great interviewers of our time, plus a fantastic writer and a TV host, and that is Damon Hack. Before I bring Damon into the show, let's talk about our friends over at Squares Golf. And folks, do you sway and you're off balance in your golf swing? You know what? It could be your shoes. A golf shoe needs structure to provide stability and reduce sway. How can you tell if your shoes lack structure and are hurting your game? If you can hold your shoes by the toe and heel and twist it, toss it. Squares was designed for the perfect balance of structure and comfort. Isn't it time you tried Squares? Try the new Speedbolt at squares.com. That's SQAIRZ.com.
Frustrated with your golf game? Imagine playing with total confidence. Join me, LPGA Pro and golf mindset expert Debbie O'Connell, for my Conquer Your Golf Mind Challenge. Bill cut 6 strokes, and Rory is club champion. What's your goal? Click the link or text NEXT to 727-339-0106. Use code NEXT for $20 off. Your tee time for transformation is now. Will you take the shot?
All right, now back in making his 6th appearance with me here on Next on the Tee is Golf Channel host Damon Hack. Let me remind you a little bit about Damon's background. He's from L.A., graduated from UCLA with his undergraduate degree and UC Berkeley with his master's degree in journalism. Started out covering the 49ers for the Sacramento Bee. In 2000, he moved over to Newsday covering the Knicks and golf. In 2002, he joined the New York Times covering golf and the NFL. 2007, goes over to Sports Illustrated covering golf and the NFL for them, and then joined the Golf Channel in 2012. He is by far one of the best hosts and interviewers in the business. You saw that on display at the US Open, and every time you tune into the Golf Channel, and I couldn't be more honored, he is back with me again this week here on Next on the Tee. Hey, Damon, how are you, my friend?
Chris, such a kind introduction. I'm touched, I'm moved, I'm humbled. I just stepped off the golf course. I am not nowhere near a +3, but I still love the game. How are you, my friend?
I'm really good, thank you. What golf course did you just step off of?
I played Shorehaven, a wonderful spot in Connecticut, Norwalk. I played with Chris Russo, a Mad Dog radio fame, Rich Lerner, my colleague at Golf Channel, and Mark Cannizzaro, a longtime New York Post golf writer and NFL writer. We had a blast out there. It was a gorgeous day. Chris and Rich took us at the end. A beautiful iron approach and a two-putt from Rich Lerner was enough to get the job done. I guess we have them on. No, we beat them on the back. They beat us on the front. They beat us on the match. And then Chris Russo also made a birdie on 15 that was worth, 3 carryover greenies. And he also had the birdie. So we ended up digging into our wallets, myself and Mark Cannizzaro, but we did it with a smile on our face. We had a lot of fun.
Good for you guys. Damon, I want to start our time going back to the U.S. Open. You did a lot of great interviews with the players there at Pinehurst. What are some of your favorite takeaways from this year's U.S. Open?
Gosh, Chris, I'm so fortunate in listening to you read my kind of journey in this business that I'm getting to an age and a vintage where I'm starting to know these guys a little bit more. I get some repeat customers like Scottie Scheffler. I interview quite a bit, especially this year because he wins almost every time he tees it up. Rory McIlroy, though I didn't get to interview him on Sunday, he opted out, understandably, considering the putts he missed on 16 and 18. But whenever I have someone sitting next to me or standing next to them, I feel like I get their best stuff. I do my best to ask short questions that hopefully lead to long, thoughtful answers. I try to empathize with these athletes, these competitors, these sons and dads in some cases, and try to ask thoughtful and occasionally the tough question when required. But just to have the opportunity to interview these players every day feels like the first day of work for me, Chris. I'm tickled, I'm touched to do it. Sitting with Rory early in the week, he was playing so well. Sitting with Scottie, he's just a kind-hearted human being. I just love asking questions and learning about the game and finding out how they go about their business. And one of the coolest things I got to do was after the U.S. Open, I got to play in a Pro-Am at the Travelers Championship with Ben James, a young UVA star who's going to one day, I believe, be on the PGA Tour, and got to be inside the ropes with one of the best young players and learn about how they go about their business. But Pinehurst was unbelievable. Seeing Bryson DeChambeau, who won at Wingfoot by 6 shots 4 years ago, cobble together a game to win at Pinehurst #2, a completely different test. Just as a golf fan, and I'm a journalist, yes, but also just a fan of the game. Oh, what fun it was to see him find a way with a really good lag putting strategy, not to mention his length off the tee, to be able to make up that deficit on the back nine and catch Rory McIlroy and pass him at the tape was quite great theater.
Speaking of Bryson, that sand shot on the 72nd hole was amazing considering everything that was at stake and the gravity of the moment. Do you think that goes down at one of the best up and downs in U.S. Open history?
Absolutely, and I'll take it to one of the best ups and downs in major championship history. Obviously, Larry Mize holding that chip shot in the playoff against Greg Norman in 1987 would be up there. You think about Tom Watson holding his shot 1982 at Pebble Beach. Tom Kite had a similar great short game shot in 1992 at Pebble Beach in the throes of winning his national championship, his U.S. Open. But my goodness, we did our show, Golf Today, on Monday from site, the day after Bryson did that bunker shot. So I was able to go down and look at that shot. And you often hear that the long bunker shot is the toughest shot in the game, and that he had the game and the clutch gene and the gumption to be able to pull that shot off, knowing what it would mean, was just wildly entertaining, beautiful, and just as someone who's trying to learn how to employ the bounce correctly and working on my short game and people say the bunker shot is something you got to get in there and just and be aggressive. It was just remarkable. And yes, I think this goes down as one of the great shots, not just in U.S. Open history, but in major championship history.
So when you were by that bunker, did you throw a ball down and give it a go?
I was afraid I was going to blade it into the picture windows behind that 18th green, so I opted not to do so. But, our Johnson Wagner did exactly that with Bryson's help on Live From Sunday night, just about an hour or so after Bryson hit the shot. And I guess Johnson's first shot without Bryson wasn't that great. And then Bryson gets in there and has that kind of magic elixir thing going on. And it rubbed off on Johnson, who's been very open about his own struggles with the short game. And my goodness, Johnson hit the shot closer than Bryson did. They had a nice high five and a hug. And what a great moment that was, kind of wrapping up a great week for us at Golf Channel and NBC, and neat to be a part of the USGA Championship. Just a wonderful week was had by all.
What are your thoughts on people's opinion of Bryson? Because it seems like perception of him has done a 180 over the last few months.
I think it's evolving, and I think Bryson is growing up and maturing. I think he's had some awkward moments, partially by his own doing, partially by just being young and different and quirky, and single length irons and 3D imprinted irons, and using a crank long drive driver, and doing things that are maybe different and unaccustomed to seeing, zigging when other people are zagging. But I think he's missed the spotlight a little bit. I think he's enjoyed his time at Live Golf, but I also know he cherishes the opportunity to play on the big stage at major championships. He's grown a YouTube audience and a following, and I think he's kind of learned to be more comfortable in his own skin, and he's kind of learned to be not just a professional golfer, but an entertainer. And I think we saw that characteristic and that aspect of him interacting with the gallery even during the round, and not afraid to have a high five or an eye-catching moment with a gallery member when he wasn't hitting a shot, and then being able to lock back in, when all the chips are in the middle of the table, and it was time to pull off a heroic shot. So I tip my cap to the evolving Bryson DeChambeau. I think he's one of the most compelling people in the game. I think you can make an argument that with Tiger not at 100%, that Bryson DeChambeau could be one of the top needle movers in the game. Jordan Spieth hasn't won for quite some time. Justin Thomas, not where he wants to be. Rory McIlroy has won this season, but still bereft of a major for more than a decade now. So I do think in many ways, Bryson DeChambeau fills a gap that the game is missing.
I agree with that. And Damon, if you go back to 2020, speaking of Live Golf, 8 of the last 18 majors have now been won by somebody who plays on the Live Tour, 3 of the last 7 in a shorter period of time. It feels like the longer it takes for this deal to get done between the PIF and the PGA Tour, the more it plays into Yasser Al-Rumayyan's hand, because he doesn't need a TV deal to survive like the PGA Tour does. And as Liv gets more of Bryson, and as you mentioned, the PGA Tour gets less of Tiger, to me, it feels like the scales start to tip in Liv's favor. What are your thoughts on that, and why a deal hasn't gotten done yet?
Yeah, I think you're right, Chris. I do think that the way things have unfolded, that this could be playing into the hands of the PIF. From what I've been told in my own conversations and reporting, I think they're actually closer to a deal than farther away. I'm not ready to say it's imminent, but it wouldn't surprise me if before the end of the year, possibly after the Olympics, something could possibly be done between the two sides. And I think the holdup, it's interesting. I actually talked to a couple of players off the record when I was playing in the Pro-Am, and part of the holdup has been nobody knows, at least at this point, exactly what this newfangled league, whether it's going to be a PGA Tour league and a Live league separately, what it's all going to look like. So there's all these negotiations happening, Chris, and no one knows what the completed house is going to look like. So they don't know exactly the road to take to get there. Part of the holdup has been, how quickly are the Live players invited back? Is there a penalty to pay, a price to pay for leaving? What happens to the players who were loyal to the PGA Tour and stayed? Do they just welcome the players back immediately who left, or is there some sort of waiting period, a grace period, a time in the penalty box, for lack of a better term? So I think that from what I've been told, they're closer than farther away, but they just don't know exactly what the final product is going to look like.
We've heard for a long time, and you mentioned, is there going to be a price to pay, a penalty to play for the live players to come back? And I just can't imagine Yasser Al-Rumayyan agrees to that. Now, I mean, it may be a wink, wink, fine or whatever, that Rumayyan pays and really doesn't care because he's got more money in his sofa than most of us will make in a lifetime. But it just doesn't seem to me like, hey, we're going to make these guys pay whatever, $100,000, $50,000, name a figure, it doesn't matter. I just can't imagine those guys digging into their wallets in real life, writing a check to the PGA Tour and go, here you go.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I do think that for a lot of people who are watching professional golf, you can't deny that the product on both sides is less than what it could be without some of those storylines, without Bryson DeChambeau week to week, or at minimum twice a month, trying to drive the green on the par 5 fixed as he did at the Arnold Palmer Invitational a few years ago, or driving the green on the first hole at Whistling Straits as he did in a Ryder Cup. The game misses seeing Brooks Koepka and misses having fans feel a certain way about Patrick Reed, whether you love him or dislike him. There has been a lack of some of the tension that some of those personalities who left, Sergio Garcia made you feel a certain way. Ian Poulter, for example, Lee Westwood. If you're a red, white, and blue fan of the US Ryder Cup team, maybe you want to root against a Lee Westwood who's been a thorn in the American side from time to time, not to mention Poulter and Sergio Garcia. So I do think a united professional golf landscape ultimately benefits everyone. Most importantly, Chris, the viewer, who I think has paid the biggest price with all this talk about millionaires and billionaires and Saudi oil and money, and as opposed to the focus being on the great golf we're seeing from the likes of Scottie Scheffler and Bryson DeChambeau and Xander Schauffele and Rory McIlroy, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that last statement more, Damon, because to your point, all these guys are getting paid a ton of money. And
yes.
And the ones that I feel like it have been left to hold the bag are us. I mean, we don't get to see those guys play very often. I mean, you can go out and watch it on the WB or YouTube or whatever, but we want to see the best playing the best. And we hear that statement all the time. Let's get the best players back playing against each other. But I feel like in all of this, the real losers have been us, the golf fans.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I didn't like seeing those players leave for live. I mean, obviously I work for Golf Channel. We carry the PGA Tour, but just as a fan and a person who loves the game, I've missed seeing Bryson. I've missed seeing Jon Rahm. I interviewed Jon Rahm at the Masters earlier this year, and before the cameras went on, and we were talking, and I miss talking about life with Jon Rahm. He's an inquisitive, deep thinker. I miss asking golf questions to Jon Rahm. Miss seeing him at Torrey Pines, where he was dominant, winning not just the Farmers, but a U.S. Open there. So the game has missed some wonderful players and some wonderful storylines. And no doubt it's a lesser product when you don't have all of those alpha males, Brahma bulls, bumping heads and trying to outdo each other, because that's when golf is at its highest, when the best players in the world are going toe-to-toe.
You alluded to a moment ago the Ryder Cup, and yesterday, in a very surprising move, in my opinion, the PGA of America names Keegan Bradley as the next Ryder Cup captain, a guy who Zach Johnson left off the team last year when he was ranked 11th and should have probably been on the team, ostensibly because he wasn't one of the boys. Were you stunned when you heard the news that Keegan was going to be the guy?
I was, Chris, and Keegan was stunned. I spoke to Keegan today on our show, Golf Today. We carried his press conference, and he said that a couple of weeks ago he received a phone call from Seth Waugh, now the erstwhile CEO of the PGA of America, John Lindert, the current president of the PGA of America, and Zach Johnson, the captain who left him off the team. They were on the call to ask Keegan Bradley if he would be interested in being the captain for 2025 at Bethpage Black, down the road from where Keegan attended college at St. John's University, where he won a bunch of college events and he used to play the golf course, told us today, or told us press conference today that he would play the 3rd to the 14th hole, and once, wasn't supposed to cross the street, but they did it anyway and played that beautiful 4-hole stretch from 15 to 18. So Keegan was surprised. I think it speaks to the PGA of America thinking outside the box, doing something different, especially with the fact that Phil Mickelson, who, believe it or not, had been earmarked for that job before he left for Live, because he was the so-called People's Champion from 2002 when Tiger Woods won the U.S. Open there. Even in 2009 when he finished runner-up to Lucas Glover, there was a love affair between Phil Mickelson and the New York market. Phil is at Live. That ship seemed to have sailed. Tiger Woods was asked if he was interested. He's dealing with the PGA Tour Live conversation. Didn't think he could give it his full attention. So the PGA of America had to come up with something. And I tell you what, Keegan Bradley bleeds red, white, and blue, loves the Ryder Cup, heartbroken to be passed over the few times that he has as a player. He's the 19th ranked player in the world right now, Chris. The only complication I see is if he qualifies on points. He said he wouldn't pick himself as the captain's pick, but in this era, when so much is asked of the captain, if he continues to play well, we're talking about a runner-up finish just a few weeks ago at Colonial, a winner last year at the Travelers. How will he handle everything? He says he's got John Wood as a team manager. But my goodness, imagine Keegan Bradley playing so well that he's on the team and then as a playing captain. Haven't seen that since Arnold Palmer in the 1960s. But I think it's a problem Keegan Bradley wouldn't mind having, to be both a captain and a player.
Damon, as we look ahead a couple of weeks to the Open at Royal Troon, the last time we were there for the Open, we saw that epic battle, speaking of Phil, between he and Henrik Stenson, where they lapped the field. It's hard to imagine that Stenson finished 20 under and Phil was 17 under. J.B. Holmes, who was third that week, was 11 strokes behind Phil. Talk about this year and who you like and why.
Yeah, there are wonderful echoes of Jack and Tom Watson. They did it at Turnberry in 77, but Henrik and Phil really separated themselves 8 years ago from the rest of the field. I'm very excited. I'm leaving Saturday night to head over to Scotland, and I've been to Troon in the past. Can't wait to see what the golf course looks like. The postage stamp, of course, the beautiful short and devilish par 3. I mean, I want to know if Scottie Scheffler can continue on this historic run and add another major championship. He's a wonderful thinker on the golf course, shot maker, short game, among the best to ever do it. His college coach, John Fields, once told me he has a short game that is second to none. We often see him holding out. I want to see how his skill set and his heater that he's on, and maybe it's not just a heater, maybe this is who he is, how it translates to links golf. Also, Bryson DeChambeau coming off that major, his second U.S. Open at Pinehurst. What will he have in store? Can he kind of find the humps and hollows and the shot making and the ground game that is required on a links golf course? But we've seen Nelly Korda cool off a little bit on the LPGA. She, of course, has had an historically great season, especially the first half of it. She's missed 3 cuts in a row on the LPGA. Can Scottie Scheffler carry this momentum across the tape, win a claret jug, maybe win the FedEx Cup, which he lost a couple of years ago to Rory McIlroy? So I'm still fascinated by Scottie Scheffler and his mentality, his hunger, his competitiveness, and his all-around game.
Let's take that a step further, and just a couple more before I let you go. But on that line, if Scottie were to go and win the Open Championship, or he wins the Tour Championship, maybe he wins both, we'll see. But if he were to kind of knock down one more of those pins, is he the guy that could be the player that Tiger hands the baton to and he becomes the next generational player and moves us now the game forward? We go from Jack to Tiger to Scottie?
I know, maybe a far-fetched thought. You know, he was on that US Ryder Cup team at Whistling Straits before he ever won a golf tournament a few years ago, and look at him now. From a physical standpoint, I say yes. His putting woes seem to be behind him. His ball striking numbers are at a level of Tiger Woods' height of power. He's putting together a historically great season, a la Ben Hogan, Vijay Singh back in 04, Tiger Woods, choose your year, 05, 99, 2000, for example. He's not going to be a transcendent star. He's not Arnold Palmer. He's not Tiger Woods in the red shirt on Sunday. But if you appreciate great golf, imagination, short game, if you appreciate just a good human being who's a new dad and a doting husband and son, and it comes from good stock. I've gotten to talk to his parents. I've talked to his wife. He's just a good egg. And if you like seeing someone, get up and down from tough spots and, drive the ball through a needle and hit irons like nobody's business, he could be the guy. He's not slowing down. Players Championship winner twice, 2 green jackets. He is in rarefied air, and he's very, very comfortable the higher the mountaintop he climbs.
So let's switch gears before I let you go. How's the family? I've been interested to see some of the great places you guys have been traveling to.
Oh, we've been fortunate, Chris. The boys are healthy. Thank you so much. My wife is with them right now. They're in Florida, the Sunshine State. I got 3 tennis players. I don't know what happened. They like a little bit of golf and basketball, but I got 3 tennis players, 13 years of age, triplets, grinding in South Florida as we speak, working on their forehand, backhand, and serve. But the last couple of summers, able to take them on safari to Kenya and Tanzania a couple summers ago, and then last summer, Botswana, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. Memorable seeing the big 5 and lions and cheetah and rhinos and leopards in their natural habitat. But right now, the boys' natural habitat is some hardcore tennis and dodging some thunderstorms in Coral Springs, Florida.
Damon, let our listeners know, how can they stay up to date with all the great things you're doing? We can obviously watch you on the Golf Channel. How can they follow you on social media?
Yeah, occasionally posting on Instagram at Damon Hack GC and also at Goats and Grapes. I like to take pictures of wine bottles and have a few reds, or in the summer, it's more of the white wine variety. And then, of course, on X, formerly known as Twitter, also at Damon Hack GC, and on your television screens on Golf Channel and NBC.
Well, Damon, it's always a huge thrill when you're a part of the show. I always have so much fun getting to listen to your stories and your insights. I hope we get this privilege of having you back on the show again sometime very soon.
Krista, you always ask great questions. I hope my answers are up to snuff, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Damon, take care, my friend. All the best to you and your family. We'll catch up soon.
And you and yours, buddy.
Thank you, sir. That is the great Damon Hack, folks. You want to talk about someone who's a quote-unquote great egg? You just heard him. He is just one of the great people that you get to meet in this life. We all get to enjoy him on the Golf Channel. I get to kind of learn how you do this thing by watching Damon on a weekly basis. He's a great broadcaster. He's an outstanding interviewer. And as great as he is at that, he's a 10 times better person. So I can't thank him enough for being a part of this show now for a 6th time. Our good friend, Tom Patry's a mutual friend of ours. Damon has had Tom as his coach, and I'm sure that has helped his golf game immensely grow over the years. That's why he's in these matches with these guys right up to the end. But Damon is just, like I say, just a gem, and I can't thank him enough for being a part of the show as often as he has. Again, follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Damon Hack GC, and hopefully, like I say, we get to have him back on the show again really soon. All right, my friends, it is time for me to put a bow on this week's edition of Next on the Tee. My sincere thanks go out to Jonathan Shusky, Julia Ray, Jeremy Jean Marie, and Damon Hack for joining me this week. Scheduled to join me next week are, well, of course, Tom Patry is going to be back, but we're going to be celebrating a huge milestone with him next week because it's going to be Tom's 100th appearance on the show. So very excited to have him here and celebrate that milestone. Also shows you how crazy I am. Our good friend Mark Calcavecchia, speaking of the Open Championship at Troon, he's going to be back on the show. Mark won the Open Championship at Royal Troon back in 1989, so looking forward to getting his insights. Another good friend, Jay Delsing from Golf with Jay Delsing, the show that is fantastic. Jay is just a wonderful guy as well. He's going to be making a return visit. Looking forward to getting his insights on the Open Championship as well. And then we'll round things out with a guy that Jeff Smith said you're really going to enjoy, especially if you give him a dozen donuts, and that is James Hong. He's going to make his next On the Tee debut. James is a fantastic PGA professional. Looking forward to having him as part of the show next week. So it's going to be a really fun one, folks. I hope you'll come back and be a part of it with us. I want to thank our friends over at the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review before we sign off for hosting this show on their site. You can find it by going to triblive.com and click on the sports section tab. You're going to find the most recent episode for you there on the homepage of the sports section, where you can click on sports and then podcasts, and then you'll see the next On the Tee logo. Click that, and every episode from this season are going to be available for you right there. You can also find the show on Good Pods, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audio Boom, and Player.fm. And as always, my thanks to the folks over at Good Pods for making this show one of their recommended podcasts. So please download the free app and stream your favorite podcast right there on your favorite device. But like I say every week, most of all, my sincere thanks go out to all of you for being the greatest supporters in the history of podcasts. I appreciate you all so very much. Until next week, hit 'em straight, my friends.